individual a little bit, but I don't think it does anything for the overall ideology.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would you not say that a lot of the ideology, would you say that Trump was more a symptom, or did he spur the ideology himself? And
I view things as a push and pull, with him largely being a symptom, but also being a little bit of a push as well. So symptomatically, like, our country existed in a way that allowed Trump to exist, and then once Trump exists, he pushes a little bit and makes it a little bit worse, right? So I don't know if our country would have accepted January 6th before Trump, but with Trump in office, that becomes more acceptable, basically. Yeah.
Well,
bit of a push and pull.
I think it is still effective to like be able to like deplatform people, and those types of individuals. It is effective in the sense that once they lose their voice, they're unable to spur those ideas, encourage people into into proliferating those ideas. I think it is pretty effective once you cut their voice and those ideas are no longer able to be voiced, then it does have an effect on like the overall culture.
It can a little bit. So this is kind of like the thing that I'm scared of is as we move more aggressively in this direction, you're starting to see people getting bigger on these alternative platforms where we have no reach. So Rumble is a really good example of an alternative platform. Parts of YouTube can be a good example. And it feels like what's happening is this kind of like canceled crowd. It used to be like the intellectual dark web. Now it's like Joe Rogan and friends and all these people. They're getting larger and larger. And I feel like we're going to hit a breaking point to where you can't just ban and censor these people anymore. And they're going to have all these platforms to talk on. And now you've like completely lost the ability to communicate with them. You said you did IR, right?
That's true.
Have you, did you follow when we talked about cutting Russia off from SWIFT?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So, in my opinion, I'm not an international relations guy, so this might be really stupid. But one thing that's really scary from my point of view in cutting Russia off from everything, including SWIFT. Now, they didn't get completely cut out of SWIFT, right, for transaction-related energy. But the scary thing about cutting Russia off from SWIFT and then everything is that what if Russia could survive with just their little Eurasian community and they were totally fine? If that happened, we'd be in a really weird position in the West where we're like, okay, Russia's actually okay despite all of our sanctions. Now they can operate completely independently from us, and we have like no leverage whatsoever anymore on them. And I worry with the cancel culture stuff that's going to happen, that like these alternative platforms will build up and someone will be like, okay, I don't believe in vaccines, I hate trans people, minorities, and I'm going to go make a living over here, and I'm actually fully supported and okay doing it. I've got my Black Rifle Coffee sponsorship, I've got my Rumble stream, my whatever platform, and now they're like untouchable and unreachable. And that's like the scary world I feel like we're headed for. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a pretty good point. The case with Russia, I think it is, of course, a little bit more different because I think the intention with like being able to, like those economic sanctions and stuff like that is less so to be it's more to cause like a domestic disruption. Mm-hmm. In the case of making Putin have like less support domestically for his policy.
But what if Russia could survive despite all the sanctions and completely cut off from SWIFT?
Well, I don't think that was the original intention at all, because I don't think anyone, when they cut SWIFT off, they knew Russia would survive. Mm-hmm. They would just be a lot worse off. And that's pretty much I'm pretty sure that was the only real...
The goal, yeah. But if they grew to be like relatively stable independently, even a little bit worse off, like there might be some people that would consider that a success in Russia, right? Because now they no longer have to worry about any demands from the West because the West has.
If they're able to go in completely independent.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. Like how the UK wanted to be independent from Europe after Brexit, right?
I mean, that's difficult to say because there's a lot that goes to like saying that like it's effectively impossible to be completely independent.
Sure.
From one way or another, you'll need help from an outside source.
Sure. Well, China, right?
China, exactly.
Or India.
But that being the case, it's very much true that like over a long enough period of time, any country is able to adapt to a conflict.
Yeah, which we don't want, right?
Which we do not want. Yeah. But the goal is that the conflict ends swiftly.
Sure.
Which is a hopeful measure, but
and I feel like that's kind of been my issue with the cancel culture stuff, is that like we've been pretty aggressively trying this for probably like 10 or 20 years on certain things related to racism and stuff. And when Trump came out and he said certain things, like comments that he made about like Mexicans and stuff, in my mind I'm like, you wouldn't hear this stuff in the past. Bush wouldn't say stuff like this. Reagan wouldn't say stuff like this. Like, this stuff we're way past these types of statements. There's no shot. But he said it, and people cheered, and I was like, it feels like there's a lot of people in this country that we're doing a really bad job communicating with, because we just assumed we could like cancel and shame those ideas out of existence, but they're still there.
I think that's an interesting point. Just to go back on like the idea that like cancel culture itself is, I agree, it's a reactionary it's a reactionary like I guess reaction, but
reactionary movement,
but and like it is true that like but I think it's like a different scenario, because the fact that they have these alternative platforms that they can go to is what is allowing them to spur their voice onwards. I think, do you think if they had no platform whatsoever, if that was even possible, would the issues still be inexistent?
I mean, I think people will find a place to voice somewhere their disagreements. But that question of like, what are the platforms disappeared? That's even scary to me.
That is
American. Like, I mean, it's democracy. We should allow some different strains of thought. But I think the scary thing for me is that like, as these people get pushed off and pushed out of these arenas, we start to lose like challenges to our own ideas. And I don't know why this happens, but there's a phenomenon that when you lose the other side, your side will just tear off in like this more extreme direction. And to some extent, we need, as much as I hate fucking Trump supporters, they keep you honest. Like, they keep you grounded more in conversations. We've seen this happen a lot with, we can say with the lab leak stuff, to where initially, I think the lab leak stuff, I think conservatives presented it in an insane light, as an intentional bioweapon created in a leak, blah, blah, blah. But it probably caused liberals to respond a little bit too extremely, where they didn't even want to consider the possibility. I know a couple articles have been written about maybe liberals were a little bit too hasty in dismissing lab leak, and now we've got, more questions about it. I still think it's probably a wet market thing, but we don't know. But those people with those questions will exist, and if we keep like shooing them off, not only do we not address their concerns, we also don't know as much about our side. Like, I've learned a lot about like, vaccines and COVID and immunology just from studying to have to debate like anti-vaxxers and stuff, which I think a lot of people don't know.
So you're pretty much is saying that like cancel culture. Would you say that cancel culture is undemocratic?
A little bit. That's a rough statement though, because like technically shouting somebody down is an exercise of your democratic freedom of speech. Like, you have a right to censor people to some extent. Like, if I don't like somebody on Twitter, I can block them or not work with them if I choose to. I just feel like we take it a little bit too far sometimes. Like, there are certain speakers that I probably wouldn't share a platform with, but I don't know if I would say like, you're not allowed to have the platform at all, And and you're saying that's like cancel culture. Yeah, I think it's too far. I think we should be able to, like, broadly speaking, we should be able to have uncomfortable ideas that we are forced to confront, maybe on a college campus or maybe on a platform, that we're able to deal with. Because I just feel like there's too many examples now of like these ideas coming out and people have no idea like how to even deal with it. I think a really good example is the Kanye stuff recently. A lot of people, I realize, don't have any idea how to deal with like anti-Semitism that's rooted in a little bit more factual conspiracy, right? When somebody starts saying things like Jews disproportionately control the banks and media, and it's like, okay, that's kind of true, but then nobody knows what to even say about that, and it's like, oh shit, you haven't spent any time addressing the arguments.
Okay, then how about this? Do you think that some people are more immune to cancel culture than others?
Yeah, for sure, absolutely.
And do you think in those cases where the people that are less immune to cancel culture, do you think that it's effective, that cancel culture is effective on them and not so much to like the bigger names like Trump?
I mean, it could be effective on them, but it also causes like weird externalities relating to it too. Like, there might be, like, for instance, people might have more radical ideas and they're actually willing to let on because they're worried about cancel culture. I think that's probably not good. So for instance, in some college campuses, conservatives might not be as comfortable like voicing opposition, which I think is damaging for all of us, because one, for the left-leaning students in class, they don't get to hear the opposition, and then two, the conservative doesn't get to have like a good conversation about that opposition as well. So yeah, I think cancel culture can be more damaging to people that don't have like the alternative platforms, but then I think it kind of robs all of us of like better understandings of the issues and better conversations about the issues.
Okay, so in the end, cancel culture pretty much roots you in like a dogmatic like thought. Like
Yeah.
you don't really question why you
Somewhat
think things.
anti-democratic. It makes you
Yeah.
more dogmatic, more ideologically driven, more partisan. Yeah.
It's pretty much speaking without thinking.